This is the Miners Podcast. Thanks for tuning in for episode 1. This week we talk all things Die Hard. Viewer discretion is advised.
I know Kung Fu. Oh, anybody want to see second prize? Second prize is a set of steak knives.
Hans, Bobby, I'm your white knight.
Welcome to the Miners.
Hi listeners, welcome to the Miners, a movie podcast that looks at our favorite films in completely different ways, ideally in a new humorous light. And we'll be doing this weekly with the idea of touching on some of our favorite classics. This week we'll be doing Die Hard. And the idea for the Miners, as the name suggests, is that we don't want to focus on the major stories or characters so much. We want to look at some of the more minor elements that we found equally as intriguing, particularly if you've seen a movie in excess of 100 times, like Eric, my pod partner, and I have for Die Hard. So the main minor characters that we'll look at in today's podcast is the Cox Norton investment banker, known as Harry Ellis. He's played by Hart Bochner, and he has the line actually in the introduction there.
Hans, Bobby, I'm your white knight.
And if you want to learn more about what we think about that, stay tuned. We'll also be talking about Hans Gruber, the incredible villain played by Alan Rickman, and also some other characters and a lot of plot lines and things we found funny over the course of this 1988 gem. And so I have Eric over in Singapore, and I've asked him to watch the movie, and he's done so. So let's get his opinion. When you watched it again for like the first time, was there anything that kind of like you're like, wow, I can't remember it was this good?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I got so hooked, because I thought I knew the whole movie by heart, but I really don't. I just know the good scenes by heart. And there's a lot of other things that I picked up that I kind of hadn't thought about in a while or forgot about. Also, you watch a movie later on and you pick up different things. So there was a lot of stuff that I hadn't really laughed about before that I was laughing about this time around.
And this obviously includes Harry Ellis, yeah?
Harry Ellis, yeah. I rewatched it with a focus on Harry Ellis, and you're right. But I'm gonna let you start it off. Like, give me what you picked up about this guy, because he's pretty phenomenal.
Maxim magazine did a poll of sleazebags, and he came out number 2. He was a number 2 sleazebag in Maxim magazine, from the sleaziest magazine ever. I don't even remember who number 1 was, but he came out number 2.
I think we need to find out who beat him. That's pretty incredible that somebody beat him.
Well, you mentioned it when we were talking about doing this one, and you talked about Joseph Takagi, the chairman of Nakatomi Investment, the so-called CEO, mentioned an Indonesian project while Hans is walking him through like the penthouse of Nakatomi Plaza.
Is this what this is all about? Our project in Indonesia? Contrary to what you people may think, we are going to develop that region, not exploit it.
And you're basically like, first of all, how deep was Ellis involved in the deal for Indonesia?
Ellis is in charge of international development.
And how many government officials were paid off?
As two guys who've worked in Southeast Asia, it's safe to say that Harry Ellis was at some karaoke parlors with the Indonesian officials to get this deal over the line.
He would be just right at home. I mean, again, just as a little bit of a context for anybody listening, we lived in Vietnam for about 5 years each. So we kind of have a little bit of perspective about how expats, which are just foreigners working abroad, operate in Southeast Asian countries. And if Vietnam is any indication, Harry Ellis would fit like a freaking perfectly ironed shirt in Indonesia or Vietnam. I mean, he's just the archetype. Bear Stearns douchebag in Southeast Asia.
And not only that, we worked on development projects that are almost identical to the Indonesian one in the movie. Did you look at it? It was like a bridge to nowhere.
It was an infrastructure project.
An infrastructure project. The most corrupt industry in Southeast Asia. Infrastructure.
Infrastructure, just the most extractive industry possible, where you need like the government to sign off on everything, and where like the bidding process is completely opaque. And Nakatomi is involved in a bridge project in Indonesia in 1989. I think Suharto was still in power, so for sure, just the most non-transparent business project.
And on top of that, is there any type of guy that a Southeast Asian would want to hang out with more than a Harry Ellis? If he rolled in to a bar in Vietnam, the locals would just love him.
Yes, absolutely.
He'd roll in giving them all nicknames.
Winking? He'd be doing a lot of winking, pointing the gun, calling everybody booby.
Yeah, they would love him. So I think he was definitely the driving force on the Indonesian infrastructure project. That's why JoJo loves him so much.
Jojo. If first of all, if you haven't seen Die Hard, like, there's something wrong with you. But if you have and you don't really remember it, in the first 5 minutes of the movie, when John McClane finally meets Harry Ellis, he meets him in his wife's office, or his estranged wife's office, and Harry Ellis taps Joseph Takagi, the CEO, on the arm and says,
All right, Jojo.
So Japan, which is like the most not necessarily stuck up, the most formal society in the world, and this guy's calling the CEO Jojo. These are the people that won't shake your hand. They bow. They can't even touch you. And this guy's tapping him on the shoulders, calling him Jojo. Ellis must know something about Takagi. How else is Ellis working for Takagi? He must know something.
Takagi needs a slimy white guy to work in Indonesia.
That's true.
Who else could pull off that Indonesian project other than someone that the locals love because he's coming in with the winks and the lines of cocaine and giving everybody nicknames? So in the scene where Jojo rolls in, the best thing about that scene is that Takagi covers for him.
Yes.
For doing lines of coke. He goes, meet John McClane. He's a cop. The Japanese CEO realized that his head of development is just railing lines of blow at the company party. And he's like, Harry, cover it up a little. The cops are here,
I completely forgot about that. He totally goes. He's like, yeah, this is Holly's husband. He's a cop. He's a police officer. Like, get this fucking coke out of your beard.
But not caring at all. Like, yeah, it's okay, do the cocaine, close the deals, but not when the cops are around. All right? Ellis, can you put it away when the authorities are here? We're not in Jakarta.
I mean, I was kicking this idea around with you earlier, just briefly, but I think, first of all, if anybody ever ends up hearing this podcast, I want Hart Bochner to hear this. And I'm telling him right now, if Hart Bochner wants a prequel, a treatment written for the prequel of Harry Ellis's life, I will do it for free.
Yes. Harry Ellis at Bear Stearns, preempting, he trying to get a mortgage crisis going in the 80s and getting thwarted.
He didn't understand why the restrictions on mortgage lending were so severe in 1988. He just did not get it. He's like, wait, why do these people have to have incomes and jobs for mortgages? Let's just give it to them. So, Hart, if this ever gets to you, open offer, Harry Ellis prequel. Think about it.
Okay, let me go with this for a second. Because when I was watching the movie, I was like, Harry Ellis, clearly one of the sleaziest guys to ever grace any movie. And when I was watching, though, and then I was thinking about it afterwards, I was like, everybody agrees what a terrible guy he is. But
Yes.
Does he actually do anything in the movie that negatively impacts anyone else?
Well, he does.
What does he do?
By going to Hans and saying that he's going to give up McClane, potentially he could have blown the cover. Remember Hans figures out that Holly is McClane's wife? Now Hans... Actually, you know what? They weren't going to spare anybody anyways. What difference does it fucking make?
No, but he also didn't rat out Holly. Even when he got faced with a gun, he didn't say, oh, it's Holly's ex-husband.
That's
He's
true.
Like, he goes, how can you say you don't know me? After all these years, John boy.
Hey, John boy.
But, okay, so what does Harry do? We open the movie, and he's hitting on a woman with an estranged husband.
And 2 kids.
Okay, but 2 kids, but her husband doesn't even live with her. And he's at a party, he's just hitting on some girl. It's not really that terrible.
It's a co-worker, too.
Okay, it was the 80s.
Yeah, no. I'm
What are you
agreeing
gonna
with
do?
you. I'm agreeing with you.
And then he's, railing lines off of her desk. But it's a company party. At a company party, so I guess it's bad because it's a company party. But clearly Jojo, the CEO's okay with it because he walks in and he's fine with it. So this guy knows he's not really out of his arena by doing lines at the party. It's also a fucking party in the 80s. Like, why would he not be doing lines?
That's true. That movie, that would have made a Die Hard even less realistic if he wasn't doing cocaine at the party.
Yeah, and then, so then after that, show him the watch. But, what did he really do there bad? He gave the woman a Rolex.
Show him the watch. It's just a small token of appreciation for all her hard work. It's a Rolex.
There's no crime behind giving her a Rolex.
Yeah, it's a sign of appreciation. It was a good year.
And then later, that's all he does up until he goes and gets himself killed, which doesn't hurt anyone else anyway. So then I was thinking, okay, wait, no, listen, because this guy doesn't do anything that affects anybody negatively. And then I was thinking, does he actually do anything that affects anyone at all? Does anything he does in this movie affect the plot or any other character in any way at all?
So you're basically saying if you took Harry Ellis out the movie, oh, you're right, nothing changes except the movie's not as good.
Yes. But it's just a great character thrown in for almost no reason.
No, but this is what I wanted to talk to you about because, so back to how short he's in the movie. He's in the movie for less than 10 minutes. Is this the greatest short role in a movie ever? Anthony Hopkins won Best Actor for Silence of the Lambs, and he's only in the movie for 17 minutes. And the other candidate, the other nomination I put out there is Alec Baldwin as Blake in Glengarry Glen Ross. He's in there for less than 10 minutes. And he does the whole coffee is for closers speech. A, B, C, always be closing, yada, yada, yada. Do you think Harry Ellis' performance is better than those 2 other ones? Or Hart Bochner?
What I'd say, though, is that those other 2 movies you couldn't have had without those 2 guys.
That's true.
This guy is totally not even relevant to the story. So he's almost in his own class here. Like, how many characters can you find that are not relevant to the story that are the favorite character in what is a loved movie?
He is essentially the opposite of Jar Jar Binks. You could take Jar Jar Binks out of Phantom Menace or whatever, all those stupid Star Wars prequels, and nothing would change. But everybody would be so much happier. If you took Harry Ellis out of Die Hard, I mean, it's still like a 9.5 instead of a 10. But no, it's like an 8.5. Harry Ellis is worth 1.5 on IMDb.
Let me say this, though. If you didn't have Harry Ellis in this movie, and you just watched it normally, do you think anybody would be watching it going, I think it's really missing something?
For the sake of time, let's just talk about his meeting with Hans Gruber. And again, I want to proposition Hart Bochner again. And Alan Rickman. Because my other idea for a script was to write a prequel, and it's one movie, of Alan Rickman, or Hans Gruber, and Harry Ellis. And you just show their lives, complete parallels, until they meet in that office in Nakatomi. How great of a movie would that be?
And you know where they should cross paths earlier in the movie, like around minute number 20 or something, at the tailor where Jojo gets his suits.
Or the barber, because they have the exact same haircut and facial hair.
Yes. So they keep crossing paths at all these places, but they don't really know each other. It's like one of those romantic comedies. It's like How I Met Your Mother,
yeah.
Where they keep seeing the mother there and you don't know who she is. That's what's going on in Ellis's life.
So let's talk about when he rolls in there. So just a completely iconic performance when he rolls in there.
Hans, Bobby, I'm your white knight.
The I'm your white knight is just fantastic. I feel you could splice that in with any other scene, like any problem anybody has in any movie, and he just rolls in with I'm your white knight, problem solved.
Considering that he doesn't actually have any relevance to the plot of the movie, I think that's a good point, because how many other movies could you have thrown him into? Right? You could have just thrown the same scenes into any movie to make it a much better movie. Because it totally doesn't matter.
Like at the beginning of Godfather, when the funeral parlor owner comes in and complains that his wife or his daughter got raped and like assaulted, and he would just roll in and be like, no, Don Corleone, I got this. I'm your white knight. Let me deal with this guy.
Don, Booby.
Yeah, Don, Booby, I'm your white knight.
When I was watching that scene, I was actually wondering, I don't know why, because, I was taking notes, that's why. And I was like, how do you spell Booby? And I was wondering that. So I wanted to, do you know how to spell Booby?
Well, I Googled it, and some guy made a shirt with Booby on it, and it was like Bubie. But I was under the impression it would have been like Buby? Booby? I don't know, man. What'd you end up on?
I spelled it Boobie, but then I realized
Booby.
that's Booby, not Booby. And then when I looked online, what I found was that I read the entire speech. I was like, I'm going to look up this screenplay and see, like, how did they write that line? And the entire monologue that he goes into with Hans is written out word for word with the pauses and everything. So it's just a brilliant piece of writing. Except that last word is baby.
Oh, so this is Hawk's word. So Hart
Yes.
Bochner comes in and ad-libs the script.
He ad-libbed one syllable in the entire script.
He
And it's the
ad-libs
great, I think it's the
one
best
letter.
ad-lib. What? That ad-lib it's got to be one of the greatest ad-libs in movie history right there. On a power syllable level, like, I don't think you can change one syllable anywhere else in any other movie to add that kind of extra level.
So we're nominating Hart Bochner for potentially the greatest non-relevant performance in movie history and the greatest ad-lib ever.
Yes, because if you read that monologue, it's written so perfectly that you don't actually think there's anything that could improve it until you get to the last line and you see Booby.
I just want to highlight Bochner's performance a bit more. And again, if you haven't seen Die in a While, just watch these scenes again. His facial expressions when the guy's pouring the Coke for him, it's just priceless. It's just, the guy's pouring the Coke for him, he just nods at him. He's got this shit-eating grin on his face. It's unreal. I can't talk anymore about this guy, man. It's too much. He deserves more praise, but we could literally talk about him for 4 hours.
No, we're gonna keep going because there's so much that we haven't even covered yet in his 7 minutes. Okay, because first I want to know now what's actually a better nickname, JoJo or John Boy?
That's a good question.
But you have to also consider the context. JoJo is a Japanese CEO of the company this guy works for.
Yes.
And John Boy is the estranged husband of a woman he's trying to fuck.
And he has a gun across the table from him while he's doing this. And just, the calmest guy ever. No, you're right. And you once told me that when you were watching Obama Romney during the election debates, you were just like, the day after, you're like, man, I hate Romney, but that guy would just be an animal in the boardroom. And that would be Harry Ellis. If Harry Ellis is that cool with a gun across from him, he definitely can negotiate $1 million deals for breakfast.
Oh, yeah. I don't doubt that he really did. I mean, and look at the balls. He rolled in to Hans's office as the White Knight. I mean, this guy does not have any fear.
No, he fully believed that he was going to go in there and close this deal.
I think what he didn't realize, though, is that the deal he had to close was with McClane, not with Hans.
Yeah, true.
He's never closed a New York City cop before. This is not an Indonesian authority. Wait, but so going back to the nicknames for a second, clearly the only reason that Ellis doesn't have a nickname for Holly is because he's trying to fuck her.
Wait, give me your theory. What's your theory on this? You don't give nicknames to people you're trying to hook up with because that puts you in the friend zone?
No, not the friend zone, but he was still trying to be classy. What I'm saying is if she went home with him that night after he hit on her, she would have woken up in the morning with a nickname. She rolls into the office the next day And she's no longer Holly.
She's Hollywood. Hollywood. Yo, Hollywood, last night was great, eh?
From then on, she's Hollywood. That's all she is.
Hollywood. From then on, she's Hollywood.
Yeah. So on that level, it's really good that she didn't do that because it would have really hurt her career.
I actually want to mention Holly Gennaro McClane really briefly because I've seen Die Hard probably 500 times, and that's not a typo. And I never thought Holly Gennaro was attractive until I was watching it again. And if you actually pause it at the end of the movie when Hans has her hostage, she has a fantastic rack. And I'm gonna post that on our page that's hosting this thing.
Because I can see you right now. Did you just give a point to your wife? Is that what you just did?
Yeah, she wasn't very happy about that. But... All right, hold on.
Man. Yeah. We didn't even get to my notes. I have notes here. I took notes about the 7 minutes that Harry Ellis is on screen.
All right, Cole's note me right now.
All right, let's see. What do we got here? When I was watching it before, it never really struck me that Ellis is his last name.
Yeah, you thought it was his first. I thought so too.
What office do you work in where, like, the CEO and everyone just calls you Ellis?
Why does McClane call him Ellis?
Yeah.
McClane calls him Ellis when he's talking to him on the radio.
I know. Why is everybody calling him Ellis? Why is Ellis not his first name? Because it's a great first name. It's way sleazier than Harry. You know? If he was just named Ellis, it's sleazier. And I think that's why people go with the last name with him, because they look at him and they're like, Harry's almost too classy for this guy. So we're going to roll with Ellis.
If there's any justice in the world, he would just become a Brazilian soccer player and have one name. That's it. Social security card, driver's license just says Ellis.
Okay. All right. That was my last point. So now you can move on from Ellis. Let's, or Harry, as he should be called.
Okay, so the guy, this is our first show, episode, whatever you wanted, and the kind of idea was to talk about the minor characters or the non-protagonists and non-main characters. But clearly, with Hans Gruber, you could argue this movie is about him. So we have no idea what we're doing. We're just going to do it. And if it takes away from the name, the minors, whatever, just deal with it. So we're going to talk about Hans Gruber, who arguably this movie is really about. Would you say this movie is Hans Gruber's movie?
Hans does steal the show at points. No, I think he's just a great villain. I think that, some villains are villains that you actually hate and you don't root for them. But he's a great villain in the sense that you actually kind of like him. He seems like a pretty likable guy, actually, to me. Aside from, all the killing and that.
How unnecessary was it for him to kill Takagi? Completely unnecessary.
But isn't he kind of likable? Like, you kind of like Hans, don't you? He's not despicable on a personality level.
The comment that he makes that made me like him the most, he has two of them, actually. It's when he's walking with Takagi around the penthouse area where they have the model makeups of the projects. And he's like,
Mr. Takagi, I could talk about industrialization and men's fashions all day, but I'm afraid work must intrude.
I like that line, and I like the line where when Ellis is buttering his toast.
I watch 60 Minutes. I say to myself, these guys are professional, they're motivated, they're happening, i.e. they want something.
Hans just goes,
You're amazing. You figured this all out already. I must have missed 60 Minutes. What are you saying?
He's really endearing. Like, I think in that sense he was.
Or maybe Alan Rickman is just really endearing. Maybe it's a despicable character, and it's just played so well that you kind of like him because Alan Rickman is just great. And his delivery is spot on. Every line he delivers is a quotable line. How many unquotable lines does he even have in that movie? Any line that Hans says, you can just say to some other guy that you know, and they're going to laugh.
And they're going to know it, yeah. Everybody knows every Hans line.
There's a few John McClane lines that are really great, but not every one.
Regarding Hans, and I mentioned this to you before, but when he does that whole scene where he's on the roof looking for the detonators or whatever, and he bumps into John McClane, and he pretends to be an American guy. He pretends to be Bill Clay.
Clay. Bill Clay.
Alan Rickman is just a genius, and I told this to you already. He is a British actor playing a German terrorist pretending to be an American hick, and he just kills it. That Bill Clay scene is incredible.
And that's what I'm saying. It's the German accent's hilarious, but he does the Bill Clay with an American accent. You know, I used to have friends who would say that. You know, they'd go, "Oh God, you're one of them." You know, they would do that, and it works like at any time. Like, you know, you could be like in the middle of a drinking game or something, and somebody says like Bill Clay, and you're gonna laugh, you know, because in any context, any line that Hans gives in that movie is just a quotable line.
Oh. Please, God, no, you're one of them, aren't you? You're one of them.
That whole scene, though, there's something off about that scene. Like, did McClane know that was Hans, so he gave him a gun without bullets?
He was testing him, yeah. Obviously, he was testing him. Otherwise,
Why
the
would
gun
he
would have
test
had
him?
bullets, right? Because he suspected it was Hans, or he suspected it was a terrorist or bank robber, whatever you want to call them.
All right, dude. So the thing I wanted to talk about was, and we mentioned it as one of the quotes from the movie. And again, we'll post these later on the page if when we get the chance. Is the line where he goes, so he finally tricks the FBI into giving him a helicopter, and he tells Leo, who's the black programmer. And before I keep on going about Hans and what I want to talk about, I want to talk about Leo. Quick segue. How the hell did they recruit this guy? It's a bunch of German terrorists. Only one guy can speak English. And they recruit this guy's clearly American, a black programmer in 1988.
Yeah, in real life, wouldn't this guy have been Russian?
Yeah, wouldn't he have been Russian or not black? Because he knows the Lakers playbook, so he could come in pretending to talk about the Lakers. Oh, and Magic passes it to Worthy and to Kareem, as if it makes a difference with the security guard at the door. Shoot him in the face.
He gets knocked out by the only other black dude. Oh, well,
Yes.
actually, not the cop, but the limo driver.
3 black guys. 4. Agent Johnson. So 4 black guys.
Yeah. Half of them get killed. But we're in, like, the middle of the 80s. This is, like, probably the most black roles for a mainstream movie that we've even had up to that point. You know, like, they were not giving roles to black dudes back then. So I guess at least, you know, they gave some black guys some minor roles in this movie.
Well, the guy that wrote the script, Steven D'Souza, he also wrote 48 Hours and Beverly Hills Cops 3. So maybe he had a soft spot. Namely of Eddie Murphy, though. So I don't know if that exactly works.
Imagine if Eddie Murphy played John McClane. Think about what a different movie you'd have on your hands.
What if Eddie Murphy had played Ellis?
Oh, man.
All right, dude, let's get back to Gruber. So Hans is a West German terrorist who's so extreme he gets kicked out of the terrorist organization, which according to the interweb is called Volksfrei Movement. So apparently he's a really extreme guy.
But he's actually, in the end, he's just after money. So maybe he wasn't extreme enough. Maybe they're like, this guy's a fucking sellout. He's just in it for the cash. And that's why they kicked him out. Because it doesn't really seem like he has much political motivations here.
Oh, that's actually a really good point. Like, he wasn't in it. Yeah, it was all a farce.
This guy only cares about money, as evidenced by the 20% line that you love.
He had this massive scheme, and this is what we've all kind of been wanting to get ourselves to, is he claims he's going to be earning 20% on a beach somewhere.
We'll be sitting on a beach, earning 20%.
It's a bearer bond, and bearer bonds have... The reason why they're so sketchy is because you don't have to register for the bearer bonds. They're completely unregistered. Whoever physically holds them is the owner of it, so you can steal them at will. So it raises 2 questions. Number 1 is, why does Nakatomi have $640 million in bearer bonds, which are completely anonymous? And number 2, well, the bearer bonds are probably to pay off Indonesian government officials, but number 2
clearly.
is where are you getting 20%? And I feel like you might have some ideas about this.
Me?
Where are you getting 20%?
I don't know where he's getting 20%. I think actually maybe if Ellis walked into his office and said, Hans, Bubby, I can get you 20%, he would still be alive. That would have saved his life. But what I'm thinking is, why does he need 20%?
Yeah.
His whole fucking plan is to live on a beach. Like, he doesn't have some big political motivations. This guy just got $600 million to live on a beach. How many fucking Mai Tais can you buy for $600 million?
What is it with the Gruber family? His brother in Die Hard with a Vengeance steals like all the gold in the world, and he's like, the next thing we're gonna do is buy a country. Like, what are these guys doing with their money?
That actually at least maybe has some political motivations to have a country. Gruber wants to sit on the beach. On top of, wait, let me ask you this, because how many guys are in this little criminal ring? There's maybe 10 of them, right?
And yeah, by the end of it, how many are alive?
But even to begin with, I don't think it's an even split on the money, right? Like,
okay,
it's not like each guy gets 60 million, right? Hans is taking down at least 200 million for himself.
Yeah, Hans is getting a third. I think Carl and his brother, because they did all the other back end stuff, they're probably getting 100 mil between two of them. The black guy's getting screwed anyways. He's probably getting $100,000. There's no chance Leo is getting a fair cut of this one. Hey, buddy, we're going to Europe. Like, peace, man.
You don't think he can find them once they disappear into Dubrovnik?
Yeah. Okay, hold on. You're right. I mean, this split part is really... Okay, I want to keep going down this path about... Okay, let's say Hans is earning 20%. Let's just say he is. By the rule of 72, that means in 3.5 years, he'll be... No, less. Like 2.5 years, he's going to be a billionaire.
He'd be one of the first billionaires.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive, actually. But when we're going back to the split, though, every time one of these clowns gets knocked off,
Yes!
Hans makes $30 million on the spot. Minimum. When Carl's brother goes down, actually, I guess Carl would get his brother's share.
Yeah,
Him and Hans
that's
would have
true.
to have a serious talk about that, you know? Like,
That would be a fantastic conversation if they made it out alive.
look, Hans, I know my brother's gone, but I think, you know, I get that portion of the money. Because that would be a tough sell on Hans. I think Hans would go for the money. He seems to care a lot about money.
Well, here's the thing with Carl, though. If they all survived, let's say him, Carl, and like the guy at the end that gets shot in the face by McClane, or they all survive. And let's say McClane survives. Carl doesn't really... My guess is this. Carl is going to spend a large portion of that money trying to kill McClane. Although that can't be that difficult. He would probably pay somebody to kill McClane, or... Yeah, he's getting that portion of the money. This tangent's going nowhere.
Or he may go through an elaborate, unnecessary procedure of torturing McClane, like in Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Although I didn't get the perception that Carl is very smart, mainly because of the scene where he's told to shoot the glass. What could Hans Gruber possibly have told Carl to make him misinterpret it? When he speaks in German, something "the glass," and Carl's looking at him.
Schießt den Fenster. Shoot the glass.
What could he have possibly have said? He's like, McClane's not wearing any shoes, man, and he can't piece together to shoot the glass, and he has to speak to him in English. Carl's an idiot.
You know, I knew that you were wondering this, so I actually sent the clip to Merrick for translation.
Oh my God, what did he say?
He says, shoot the glass.
So he told him shoot the glass in German. Carl didn't shoot the glass, so he switched to Carl's probably third or fourth language. Because in West Germany at the time, he probably speaks Russian, French, probably some Italian.
And then he just goes back with the same line, and somehow Carl, English he gets, yeah. That's which makes him even stupider than not putting it together. What you thought was that Hans just said, he's not wearing shoes. And then Carl had to make the jump in logic from, oh, I guess I should shoot the glass. It actually went, shoot the glass, and he just looked like an idiot.
You're right. If you say about the shoes, that is another layer of thinking involved.
Yeah, in the middle of the action and all that. But it was even worse. He just said the same thing Which actually, you know what it made me think of? You know how frustrating it is to work with total idiots, like even in a normal office job. Like, imagine how frustrating that would be if you were actually robbing. You were in the middle of like this huge robbery and everything, and you're just dealing with total fucking idiots.
And you had spent years putting this plan together. Years.
One thing that you really couldn't count on is how stupid your teammates are.
And this is his number 2, mind you. His number 2.
And another reason why he's stupid, aside from that scene, is when his little brother is doing some electronic shit in the beginning, and he just comes by with a chainsaw and just slashes the poles just to fuck with his brother.
Completely unnecessary. Completely unnecessary.
That is what a shitty older brother this guy is that he almost blew up the whole operation just to fuck with his little brother and make him sweat it out a little bit, you know? Ron could be a dick growing up, but I don't think he'd blow the operation just to be a dick.
So, second question was, the first one was, why does Nakatomi Corporations or trading or whatever the hell they're called have $640 million in bearer bonds?
You nailed it earlier. They need this to bribe the Indonesian officials. The Nakatomi infrastructure project is not fully legit. I think we kind of established earlier that that's why you need a guy like Ellis. You need a guy like Ellis to walk around with suitcases full of illegal bearer bonds, or I guess legal but not recorded, or however the hell you can smuggle bearer bonds and deliver them to shady third world countries where they have some real use.
I asked you before we did this podcast. The question was, this happens on December 25th, 1988. Let's assume it's a Friday. That would mean that the markets were open on Monday. What is happening to Nakatomi shares that Monday? Their chairman of investment, probably, there's other people in there when he's telling them, listen, I don't have the only password share. You can kill me, you'll never get it. There's clearly other players. He's dead. Joseph Yoshinobu Takagi is dead. Head of international investment on some huge Indonesian project, dead. Building blown up. What's the move next for this company?
Wow. I think most important thing here is to not lose the Indonesian project, which means that you need to replace Harry Ellis. So you're going to have to go through the ranks at Bear Stearns to find somebody equally scummy who can fit into karaoke parlors in Jakarta in order to save that project. That if I was at the shareholder meeting, that's what I would be pressing for pretty hard. I'd be like, you better find a real scumbag.
So they call so they're calling an emergency meeting in Tokyo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so
and then they're bringing the high-level Japanese guys straight down to Wall Street.
No, and here, okay, and this is why I love the internet, because I did a little bit of research. So we know that Ronald Reagan, who is still president, he's still president for another 2 months. He's getting a phone call. He's getting a phone call from Japan, and it's coming from Prime Minister Noboru Takeshita. Takeshita, coincidence has it, had to resign in, I think, February of 1989, so 2 months after the events at Nakatomi, for a scandal that he was involved in, insider trading in 1986. He was given pre-IPO shares of a company called Recruit. It was an HR company. It went public, and he made $66 million. So you know he's got his arm elbow deep in this Nakatomi business. And he's going to be pissed. And he's calling Reagan. Reagan's going to have to call the West German leader. And what's this conversation? What is this three-way conversation like?
Wait, why is West Germany getting involved? Just because?
Because of Hans.
But it was assuming it was really that they thought it was actually terrorism. Because if it's just a bank robber, I don't think you call West Germany. You're like, hey, you're breeding some assholes over there. It's like trying to rob me. Like the president would be like, what are you? Sorry, you know.
So the chancellor of Germany is just like, hey, I'm sorry?
Well, if it's really a bank robbery, like, well, what are you going to say? If it's actually a terrorist group, then I think, you've got reason to give the ring to West Germany and try and get some help. But at the same time, you've already killed them all. So the West German
they're
guy will
done.
actually just be like, oh yeah, thanks for taking care of that problem for me, you know?
So the chancellor's is like, thank you, Mr. Reagan. Not only did you defeat communism, you got rid of Hans and his fucking goons. I don't have to deal with these guys anymore.
Yeah. So imagine being the West German leader. You get that call and you're just like, from Reagan, and you're just like, wow. Oh, you got Hans? Thanks. The real question though is, did you get Carl?
So this is the conversation. Reagan calls the chancellor, and he's like, hey, listen, something happened in L.A., a terrorist leader, Hans Gruber. He's like, did you kill Carl? Is Carl alive or is he dead?
What about his brother?
Yeah.
What about the black dude that they're friends with? And the random Asian guy who doesn't speak but likes candy bars? Did you get him?
He should have been the computer programmer.
He looks a little too menacing for a computer programmer. Computer programmer, does he wear a sweater? I think he does wear a sweater in the movie. And glasses.
Yeah.
They made him look as harmless as possible.
The other thing I want to talk about was Takagi really quickly. And so the actor that played him, according to IMDb, his name was James Shigata. He's actually Hawaiian. And he passed away 2 months ago. Rest in peace. But this character in the movie, when Hans Gruber is reading out his resume, which is just completely unnecessary, this is this guy's resume. He went to UCLA, graduated 59. Stanford Law, graduated 62. Harvard MBA, graduated 70. I think I might have got that wrong. Anyways, he has a law degree from Stanford and an MBA from Harvard. I need to know if anybody else in the world today had that, so I Googled it on LinkedIn. I didn't find anybody, but I found a bunch of people doing Stanford MBA JDs and a bunch of people doing Harvard MBA JDs, and I got serious LinkedIn anxiety and felt really shitty about my resume, so I stopped searching. But Takagi is a beast and a very difficult cog to replace.
Wait, let me just hear it again because I didn't pay attention. Which two places did he go? What was his?
He has a JD from Stanford, a law degree, and an MBA from Harvard.
Okay. Yeah, that's Nakatomi has a big hole. That's almost as big as replacing Ellis. You're gonna have a lot of trouble filling that hole. But how did Hans even know that? Like, what, did he look it up on LinkedIn also?
Yeah, and if he got his information, he couldn't get a picture or a profile photo of this guy's face, and he's got to walk around like saying out his resume. I think that was all for show.
Yeah, he must have known who it was, right? He has the guy's whole biography.
You're telling me that Takagi wasn't on the cover of Forbes or Fortune? This is Japan was the biggest stock market in 1988.
Yeah, so Hans would have had to have planned out every stage of this entire robbery to the point of knowing at what time, within like give or take 20 minutes, the FBI are going to show up so that he can cut the final alarm. And he has researched a full biography on JoJo and came up with no photo. He doesn't have a picture of the guy. He's walking around blind. The one thing I don't have is I'm just relying on scare tactics here on this one issue. I think I'll be able to wing it.
The more we dissect the actual plan, there's some major holes in the Hans's plan. It relies on a lot of things, namely the FBI. That's a hinge. That's the entire hinge is the FBI.
No, but think about this. Think about this. How many things go wrong in his plan, and he still almost gets away with it? And it was almost even better than before because he doesn't even have to split the money. McClane knocked off 9 of his teammates. Now, instead of $300 million, he's walking with $600, plus the 20% Ellis will give him. No matter how much went wrong, he almost pulled it off.
And he still almost makes it out alive. Earning 20%, investing with Bernie Madoff.
Oh, imagine what he would do to Madoff in the end.
Yeah.
What do you mean you lost my money?
Imagine he invests with Madoff, and he finds out that Madoff screwed
And
him.
Madoff is like, oh, as if the Germans never screwed my people, you know?
All right, what else did you have?
Now, we may also cut this, but I'm trying to think. I was watching this movie, and I was like, what is the best place outside of a hostage situation to use lines from Die Hard? So, like, you're not in a hostage situation. You're just hanging out, and you're dropping lines from the movie. Like, what are the best ways to do it. I came up with a few things that I think would work, right?
Okay.
All right. So you're at the poker table, and you're sitting on your hand pre-flop, pair of kings. Some guy moves in on you, and you call him. And he turns it over, and he's got jacks. And you sit there with a smile, and you go,
No bullets.
and you flip over your kings.
No, whoops, no bullets.
And you have an audience, too, because everybody at the poker table gets it.
That's so true, though. Nobody that is playing poker at 3 a.m. at a table in Vegas or Atlantic City, whatever, has not seen Die Hard.
Except for all the Chinese guys. You have to
That's
be
true.
not at the Chinese table, but any other table, and you're getting laughs out of that one. Okay, option number 2 here. You're at a bachelor party, and the bachelor is just so fucking wasted that he thinks he can't drink anymore. But his friends want him to keep going. And everybody pours out the shots, and you just look at the bachelor and you go,
Shoot the glass.
Dude, that was funny. All right, I think we're going to wrap it up here, Ashley. If you've made it this far, thank you very much. We'll be trying to do this every week, and please find us on Twitter at MinersPod. That's Minorspod. And send us some questions regarding the movie and some movie ideas you want to hear about, and we'll be more than happy to answer those questions since we're clearly professionals. Thank you.